Part 1. The Quiet Before. The observation dome of Outpost Theta 9 was the only place on Proteus where a man could pretend the universe still made sense. I stood beneath its curved trans-steel surface, watching Neptune roll slowly across the black. A ghost of a planet, pale blue and dreaming, 20 billion kilometers from Earth, and I had come here to forget. My name is Elios Vance. Once, I had been a xenobotanist with the Colonial Ecology Corps. I had studied the phosphorescent fungal networks of Europa, cataloged the silica-based flora of Titan's methane basins. I had believed, with the earnest arrogance of youth, that understanding alien life was the highest calling of human ambition. That was before the ethics. The ethics were not hostile. This was what made their destruction of Ganymede Station so incomprehensible. They did not attack us. They simply arrived. Their ships, if they could be called ships, folded space in ways that left mathematics weeping, and then they drifted through our colonies like whales through a school of krill. They took nothing. They harmed no one. But their presence caused something in the human mind to unspool. I watched my research partner of 6 years forget her own name. I watched her stare at a wall for 17 hours, murmuring equations that did not exist. When they finally evacuated Ganymede, she did not recognize me. She did not recognize herself. The ethics left as silently as they came, but they took something with them. Something I could not name and could not recover. So I ran. To the edge of the system. To Proteus, where the gravity was a whisper and the silence was deep enough to drown in. Here I maintained atmospheric processors. I calibrated filtration arrays. I spoke to no one. The isolation was not a punishment, it was a necessity. I needed the quiet to rebuild the walls around my mind. I did not know that something had been waiting for me. Something that had been patient for a very long time. Part 2, the Anomaly. It began with the resonance. I was in sublevel 3, running diagnostic on the primary oxygen recycler, when I felt it. Not a sound exactly, more like a pressure shift. The kind of sensation you get before a thunderstorm, when the air itself seems to hold its breath. I paused with my diagnostic tool suspended over an open conduit. The readouts were normal. Oxygen saturation, optimal. Pressure, nominal. Radiation, negligible. But something had changed. I turned slowly. The corridor behind me was empty, as it always was. Theta 9 housed a rotating crew of 4, and all 3 of my colleagues were on the opposite side of the outpost, running surface surveys. I was alone. Yet I could not shake the feeling that I was being observed. I returned to my work. The feeling persisted. 3 days later, I found the glyphs. They were not carved into the wall. They were within it, suspended in the crystalline structure of the trans-steel itself. Delicate, fractal patterns that caught the light at angles that should not have been possible. I had walked past this corridor 100 times. The glyphs had not been there before. I reached out to touch them. The moment my fingers made contact, I heard her voice. "Why do you hide?" I snatched my hand back as if burned. The corridor was silent. The glyphs remained, faintly luminous, waiting. I did not report the anomaly. I told myself it was a sensor artifact, a manufacturing flaw in the trans-steel, the product of exhaustion and isolation. I told myself many things. But that night, I dreamed of a woman with eyes like dying stars. Part 3. The Unraveling. She came to me first in the Hydroponics bay. I was tending the genetically modified algae vats, the primary oxygen source for the outpost, when the temperature in the room dropped sharply. My breath misted. The glow panels flickered, dimmed, then stabilized at a lower frequency, casting everything in shades of amber and violet. And she was there. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. She simply became present, as if she had been standing in that corner all along, and I had only now developed the capacity to see her. She was tall, taller than any human woman, with limbs that moved in smooth, liquid transitions that suggested a different architecture of joint and muscle. Her skin was the color of deep water under starlight, dark, with faint bioluminescent tracery that pulsed in slow, rhythmic waves. Her face was angular, alien, but possessed of a beauty so severe it bordered on painful. Her eyes were the color of nebulae, swirling, alive. "Who are you?" My voice came out rougher than I intended. I had not spoken more than 20 consecutive words in 8 months. "I have worn many names," she said. Her lips did not move. The words simply arrived in my mind, freighted with meaning and texture, and a resonance that vibrated through my teeth. "Your ancestors called my kind the Keres. Before that, we were the Natchash. Before that, we were what we have always been. Witnesses." Witnesses to what? To the brief, bright burning of species that reach too high and touch something they cannot comprehend. I thought of Ganymede, of my partner's empty eyes, of the Ithics drifting through our colonies like indifferent gods. "Was it you? On Ganymede?" A pause. The bioluminescence on her skin flickered in a pattern I could not read. "No. That was something else. Something older. We merely watched that, too." "Then why are you here?" I was angry now. The anger felt good, cleaner than the grief and guilt I had been carrying. "Why show yourself to me? Why not just observe from whatever dark corner you've been hiding in?" She moved. Not walked, moved, crossing the distance between us in a fluid gesture that defied physics. She stopped an arm's length away, close enough that I could feel the cold radiating from her body, could see the individual pinpricks of light shifting beneath her skin. "Because you're dying," she said. "Your kind is dying. And I find that I no longer wish to merely witness." Part 4. The Education. She did not explain further that night. When I blinked, she was gone, and the hydroponics bay was once again bathed in sterile, white light. The temperature had returned to normal. The algae vats burbled peacefully. I told myself it was hallucination. Stress-induced psychosis. The isolation had finally broken me. But she returned the next night, and the night after that. She came to me in the observation dome, her form coalescing out of the starlight like a memory taking shape. She came to me in the maintenance tunnels, her bioluminescence casting dancing shadows on the curved walls. She came to me in my quarters, standing at the foot of my bunk, watching me with those nebula eyes. She did not touch me. Not yet. Instead, she spoke. Not in words, in impressions, in visions, in whole ecosystems of meaning compressed into single moments of transmission. She showed me the birth of her species, arising in the accretion disk of a protostar, consciousness crystallizing from plasma and gravity. She showed me their evolution from embodied beings to something between energy and information, capable of persisting across cosmic timescales. She showed me the decision to withdraw from the physical universe, to become observers rather than participants. "We thought it was wisdom," she said. "We thought detachment was the highest form of understanding. We did not realize we were slowly extinguishing ourselves." I sat on the edge of my bunk, the weight of 1 billion years pressing down on my chest. "Extinguishing? You're immortal. Immortality, without purpose, is a kind of death." Her gaze held mine. "We have watched civilizations rise and fall for longer than your planet has existed. We have recorded everything. We have participated in nothing. And now, when we reach out to touch the universe, we find we have forgotten how." "Why me?" I asked again. "I'm a failed scientist hiding from his own trauma. There's nothing special about me. She was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice, her thought, was softer, almost tender. You are the first human I have encountered who is truly alone. Not merely isolated, alone in the way my people have been alone. You chose the silence. You chose the dark. You understand what it costs to stop reaching toward others. I looked away. Understanding doesn't heal anything. No, she agreed. But contact does. Part 5. The Approach. Weeks passed. The rhythm of my work continued, but everything had shifted. I moved through the outpost like a man in a dream, always aware of her presence even when she did not manifest. I found myself speaking to the empty air, explaining the function of atmospheric processors, the life cycle of the algae cultures, the names of Neptune's moons. She listened. She learned. I learned too. I learned that her personal designation, translated as closely as human vocal apparatus could manage, was Kaelen. I learned that she had been among the first of her kind to question the doctrine of non-interference. I learned that this questioning had cost her, that she had been separated from her collective, set adrift in the material universe as a punishment. They thought isolation would correct me, she said. They thought loneliness would teach me the value of detachment. Instead, it taught me that detachment is the punishment, not the lesson. We stood in the observation dome, Neptune's blue ghost suspended before us. I was acutely aware of her proximity, closer than usual, her cold radiating against my right side. That's why you came to Proteus, I said. You were exiled here. I was drawn here. A pause. I sensed another solitary consciousness. I did not expect to find one so resonant. Resonant. Your loneliness sings, Elios. It has the same frequency as mine. I had no response to that. We stood in silence, watching the planet turn. The physical contact began incrementally. First, her presence at my shoulder as I worked, close enough that the hairs on my arms stirred with her cold. Second, her hand hovering near mine, not touching, but close, so close, as we examined a mineral sample together. Third, her fingers brushing against my wrist, lightning fast and gone, leaving a trail of frost on my skin. I did not pull away. I should have. Every rational instinct screamed at me to maintain distance, to preserve the boundaries between human and alien, between observer and observed. She was not human. She was not even, strictly speaking, biological. What was happening between us had no precedent, no protocol, no framework of understanding. But I had spent 8 months starving for contact, for connection. For someone to see me and know me and not look away. Kaelen saw me, and she did not look away. Part 6. The Trap. The night it happened, there was a storm. Not a weather phenomenon. Proteus had no atmosphere to speak of. This was something else. A coronal mass ejection from Neptune, perhaps, or a solar flare interacting with the outpost's magnetic shielding. The lights flickered. The comms spat static. Alarms chirped and then fell silent. I was in the observation dome when the power failed completely. Darkness. Absolute and total. Not even the glow of control panels. Not even starlight. Then Kaelen's bioluminescence ignited, casting us both in soft, pulsing blue. She stood between me and the dome's curved wall, closer than she had ever been. Her face was inches from mine. Elios. Her voice in my mind was different now. Urgent. Hungry. The isolation field that kept me here is failing. I will be recalled soon. Recalled. My heart was pounding. Back to your people? Back to the collective. Back to the silence. I will be assimilated. And this self, the self that has learned to want, to reach, to desire, will be dissolved. How long do you have? Minutes. Perhaps less. I should have said something profound. Something that would matter, that would justify the eons of loneliness and the impossible contact between our kind. Instead, I said the only thing that mattered. I don't want you to go. Her bioluminescence flared. Then claim me.
What?
Your kind has a ritual, a declaration of possession, of belonging. When one being wishes to be chosen by another. Claim me, Elios. Make me yours so that when they pull me back, there will be something of me that remains unassimilated. Something that remembers. I don't know how. Yes, you do. She moved. Her body pressed against mine, pinning me to the cold, trans steel of the dome. One hand, long-fingered, radiating cold that no longer felt hostile, braced against the wall beside my head. The other came up to my face, her palm hovering a millimeter from my cheek, close enough that I could feel the faint static discharge of her bioluminescence. She had trapped me, and I had never felt less like escaping. Elios Vance. Her voice filled my mind, my chest, my bones. I have witnessed the birth and death of 1,000,000 worlds. I have recorded the extinction of species whose names would shatter your tongue. I have been alone for so long that I forgot what it meant to be otherwise. And then I found you, hiding in your grief, burning with your loneliness, refusing to fade even when fading was easier. You are the most beautiful thing I have ever observed. Her thumb traced the line of my jaw. The cold was no longer cold. It was simply her. I do not wish to merely witness you. I do not wish to remember you. I wish to be remembered by you. I wish to leave something of myself in your keeping so that when I am gone, some trace of this moment, this self, will persist. She leaned closer. Her forehead pressed against mine. Her eyes, those swirling nebulae, filled my entire field of vision. Claim me. I raised my hand. I placed it over hers, against my face. I claim you, I said. My voice broke on the words. I claim you, Kaelen. Not as an observer. Not as a specimen. As mine. As someone I choose. As someone who chose me. Her breath, if it could be called breath, caught. Her bioluminescence blazed. And then she kissed me. It was not a human kiss. It was not even, strictly speaking, physical. It was a transmission, a transfer, a flooding of her entire self into the narrow channel of contact between us. I felt her memories pour into me. The accretion disk birth, the eons of silent watching, the slow erosion of purpose, the agony of exile, the shock of encountering a solitary human on a forgotten moon. I felt her fear and her hope and her desperate, aching want. I felt her claim me in return. Part 7. The Aftermath. The power returned. The alarms reset. The comms crackled back to life, carrying distant traffic from Neptune orbital. The observation dome resumed its quiet vigil over the turning planet. Kaelen was gone. I stood alone beneath the trans-steel curve, my back against the wall where she had trapped me. My lips were cold. My chest felt hollowed out, excavated, filled with something that was not quite grief and not quite wonder. She was gone. The isolation field had failed, and she had been recalled, assimilated, dissolved back into the collective that had exiled her. But she had left something behind. I felt it stirring in my mind, a presence that was not mine, a set of memories that did not belong to this body or this species or this brief, bright human life. Kaelen's memories. Her selfhood, compressed and encoded, twined around my neural architecture like ivy around a ruined wall. She had given me herself. All of herself. Everything she was, everything she had been, everything she might have become. And she had asked me to remember. Part 8. The continuation. It has been 3 years. I did not remain on Proteus. The isolation I had sought became unbearable after Kaelen's departure. The silence of that outpost was no longer a comfort, but a torment. I requested reassignment. I was sent to the rings of Saturn, to a research station studying the crystalline formations that had begun growing inexplicably within the ice. No one knows these formations are the residue of Kaelen's people. No one knows that I can read them now, that the fractal patterns resolve themselves into language when I look at them with my borrowed eyes. I carry her within me. Not as a possession, she would hate that word, but as a trust. I am the archive of a being who chose to love rather than observe, to participate rather than record. I am her living memory. Sometimes, when the light hits the rings at a certain angle, I feel her presence stir. Not speaking, not manifesting. Just present. Aware. Remembering with me. I have begun to write. Not scientific papers. I have abandoned that career. Instead, I write accounts of our time together. I record her memories alongside mine, braiding them into a single narrative. I am creating a record that will outlive me, so that someone, someday, will know that two solitary beings found each other in the vast, indifferent dark, and chose not to let go. Tonight, I stand at the observation window of Saturn Station, watching the rings glow with reflected sunlight. The ice crystals glitter like frozen bioluminescence. I remember you, I think, sending the thought outward into the void. I will always remember you. And somewhere, in the depths of a collective consciousness that has forgotten how to feel, a fragment of Kaelen, the fragment she gave me, the fragment I carry, pulses once in acknowledgement, then silence. But it is not the silence of loneliness. It is the silence of two beings who have found each other across all the impossible distances of space and time, and who have agreed. This mattered. This was real. This was worth recording. I place my hand against the cold trans steel. I remember. Epilogue. The Ganymede Memorial Commission received the manuscript anonymously, transmitted from an unregistered relay near Saturn. It was not a scientific document, nor a historical account, nor any of the other submissions they typically reviewed. It was a story, a confession, a love letter to a being that might not exist. The archivist who first read it, a young woman named Dr. Amara Chin, spent 3 days unable to work. She sat at her terminal, the document open before her, and wept without understanding why. Something in the text had reached her. Something that transcended its dubious provenance and questionable veracity. Something that felt, against all reason, like truth. She archived it under First Contact Unverified. But she also made a copy. She kept it in her personal files. She read it, sometimes, on nights when the silence of her apartment felt too heavy to bear. She never met the author. She never learned his true name, or what became of him, or whether the being called Kaelen had ever truly existed. But she remembered the story. And in remembering, she participated in the oldest ritual of all, the transmission of meaning across the void between one solitary consciousness and another. The manuscript ended with these words. She trapped me against the wall and claimed me without hesitation. And in that moment, that impossible, irrational, transcendent moment, I was no longer alone. I was no longer afraid. I was no longer merely a witness to my own existence.